Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about Simgot's latest set called Fermat's Last Theorem. This one is called the EA1000 also. So inside the box you do get a little card on his last theorem. You do get some words by Simgot's CEO, so you can hit pause and take a look at those words and read it, or buy it and take a look at it when you get it. So that's mostly what's in the box. There's also this case which is in the box, and this is what it looks like up close, and I will attempt to not get too many fingerprints on it before we look at it up close. But yeah, there you go. So this one is sort of, as Simgot's price of their sets increases, you get nicer builds, and this one is a very nice polished metal build. So this is a reminiscent of a passive radiator that you saw on one of their other sets. I think that was the EN1000, had a very similar looking vent radiator hole there. So yeah, very, very nice. And now that my fingers are all over, you can kind of see this one will pick up quite a few fingerprints if you tend to hold it too much. Also has removable nozzles, so that's what these look like up close. And the difference, you could actually flip them over and see the different nozzles, and you can kind of see the gold has a paperish one with a hole in the center, the black has some foam, and the red, which is here somewhere, actually I think just has a filter damper on the back of the mesh, so you can't really see it in the bag, but that is what is going on there. The cable is a very nice SPC cable with the kind of the foil wrapping. So you don't see this one too often in stock cables, but the foil wrapped SPC is something that has shown up in cable stores, and I have one that's sort of similar but a little bit different. But yeah, very nice looking cable as well. So this is what the box, that's the front of the box. On the back of the box, you get the traditional Simgot graphs, and these typically show you how the frequency response matches their targets, and that's the gold nozzle and the red and the black. And you can kind of take a quick look at how they adhere to their targets and what their intention was with each one of those nozzles. So let's kind of jump in. We'll actually start off with the nozzles, and sort of an odd place to start, but if you took a quick look at what I was just showing, so this nozzle is actually from the EA500 do-it-yourself kit, and those EA500 nozzles were actually empty nozzles, and they came with a set of filters. So this is the 500 filter on top of, and just on top of the blank nozzle. So no mesh grill, just a straight up 500 on top of that. And there's kind of a reason why, and I'll talk about it in a second, why I used that one. But also what was unique about the EA1000 is the purple dynamic driver. I think they call it purple. It looks kind of bluish, but you can kind of see the dynamic driver diaphragm kind of poking through that bluish shine back there is their purple dynamic driver. And I think they called it, I think it's this S. We can't actually see it. No, but somewhere in there, I think they actually do call it purple. So let's quickly talk about the nozzles, and I'm going to start there for a reason, because as impressions of EA1000 are coming out, started to notice that people were talking about the treble extension and the soundstage. And the first thing I sort of noticed about the stock nozzles were that they tended to cut down the amount of soundstage and treble extension that could be heard. And I think it cut across all the nozzles. And so I think they got this right. I think the treatments that they put in the nozzles got them to their targets and matched the curves that they wanted to, but I'm not sure they heard or listened, or maybe they got caught up in the passive radiator and the bass response, but I don't think they noticed the sound stage was really brought down. There's not really a whole lot of height to it. There's a lot of width to it, but it's not quite as nice as it is on other sets, and maybe even EA500. And for me, it all came down to the choice of material that they put in each of the nozzles. And that's exactly why I switched over to the EA500 do-it-yourself nozzle. Very much opens the sound stage, very much gives you more treble extension, gives you a lot more depth in the sound stage because it brings down the pin. It's a little bit more relaxed. So it did lots of very, very good things for the EA1000. And so this is going to sort of taint everything that I said and color everything that I said, but this is sort of why my review is going to be different than others. I would have included the do-it-yourself kit with EA1000 just because I heard the difference, and it doesn't take too long to immediately hear the soundstage differences in the treble extension from the included nozzles. So if my review sounds quite different than what other people are saying, it all comes down to what I did with the nozzle and the nozzle that I'm using. So do take that into consideration, and we'll kind of start right at the beginning. So what is it? And I would say that in its current state, this one is a better EA500, better driver, better bass, better vocals, better balance, better stage. The driver is very, very nice and does lots and lots of things very, very well. And it all comes through. In the first couple seconds of listening to it, you kind of hear that the driver is better than EA500. When you get to the tuning and the balance and the stage and all those other things, yeah, that's where the nozzles are going to make a difference. But kind of right off the bat, I do think that they succeeded in coming out with something that was better. And it's better, and I wouldn't say it's a huge gap, and that gap comes with there's a noticeable improvement in sound quality, but it also comes with a larger price tag, right? This one's $200 and $220. The A500 was, around $100. So maybe double the price, a little bit more than double the price. So yes, this improvement that they pulled off in the EA1000 with this driver and the passive radiator does come with a little bit of a price tag. And I will also say that it's just subtly better. If you bought EA500 and you were one who boosted the bass, I think that set actually worked well in that area. I think be careful with EA1000. You don't really want to do the same thing because they spent a lot of time on this driver development and the passive radiator. And there is a very subtle layer of detail and definition to the bass that you don't want to mask over with by increasing the bass. So yeah, you don't want everything that's worth the price in this upgrade. It comes down to a warm clarity and resolution, right? You don't want to do anything that's going to affect those things. And if you bump the bass or use a really warm source, you're going to almost smooth those over. So, and I wouldn't even say it's source picky, but do keep in mind where EA1000 shines and don't add anything that's going to mask those other parts. A treble extended source will also help as well. And I talked about this fine tuning part, and that's why it's going to be different. I think I covered all that. So sound wise, again, it's still Simgot's house sound and maybe a bit more depth in the bass, which is a better balance with the treble, and it cascades into all aspects. So here you can see all three nozzles, and you can kind of see they're all generally the same up until, and this is I think about the same as it was on EA500. You get different flavors of upper, mid, lower treble, and they tend to move and shift the peaks around a little bit, but I wouldn't say that these are three drastic different tunings. I would say that these are very much fine tunings on Simgot's house sound, just as I was saying. And so the EA500, my do-it-yourself nozzle with the 500, like I said, it actually shifted in this pinna area peak, so not as high, and it shifted in, so it's a little bit more relaxed. Over here, you're getting a little bit more treble response and extension, not being caught up in the material that they used inside the nozzle. So now you get higher soundstage, it's more deep because this isn't smashing and flattening everything into your face. Just relax that a bit, and that gives you a little bit more depth and 3D-ness to the sound stage, which is exactly what it does. And then you just need a little bit more extension, being able to be heard in your ear, and that gives you the height in the sound stage as well. So the bass, I would say that, again, this one is sort of the trickiest one to tune, as the new passive radiator is doing something, right? A passive radiator in this style, in Simgot's house sound, isn't a huge booming bass head style. This is very much a subtle amount of increasing the bass quality. And I think that the driver itself is very, very nice, and they put a passive radiator on it. You end up with something that's slightly nicer. can you differentiate between the two? What's what the driver's doing versus what the radiator's doing? I think that's a little harder to do, but I think there is a nice depth and a slight resonance to EA1000 that didn't exist on EA500. And I'll also say there's just a subtle layer of clarity and texture and definition and a tactile impact that was really smoothed over on EA500, and it actually does come across quite well on EA1000. So yeah, I can't blame them for putting a lot of focus and a lot of their attention onto the bass and the passive radiator. I think they did that very, very well, but somewhere along the line, I think they stopped listening to the soundstage and didn't quite catch what was happening with the material that they were using, which doesn't affect the bass nearly as much as it does the treble extension. So also there's kind of a depth to the bass, and that kind of resembles the resonance of a party speaker. If you ever heard one of those standalone Bluetooth speakers that have that passive radiator, I happen to have one. But that's not quite like that. This is very much at a level needed to keep the clarity in the mids and not going to shake your ear. But you do get a little bit more depth and some body to it. So the mids, I think this is where the bass was a very subtle change. I think it was a great change, but it was very subtle. It's a little bit harder to hear, very much harder to hear depending on your tips, and that's why I used the Divinis Velvet tips. They tended to give me a little bit more bass impact, so that's why I have those tips on there. So on the mids, very much more resolution, more clarity, more balance, more dimension. Everything just sounds more real compared to EA500. Again, EA500 had a similar upper mid amount of treble, in-your-face style tuning. Simgot's house style doesn't change between sets. And if you're very sensitive to this area, you're going to want to try to push this down a little bit and over a little bit. And that gives you a little bit more relaxed sound, and it gives you better balance from here all the way through out here, instead of kind of poking out and being out of place and taking too much emphasis away from the treble extension. But what you hear across in the mids it's very much clarity and resolution. It's hard not to hear it right away. I think the way the vocals are rendered is very different than EA500, and it's actually done very, very nicely on EA1000. Just more resolution and more clarity, more balance, more dimension, more real. The Nozzles will definitely shift this around a little bit, and that's why I say fine tune it. Also why I say don't bump the bass or use a real warm source. You don't want to lose that clarity in the mids due to a little bit more mid bass. It's just going to cover it up, and it's a very subtle but noticeable change, right? I think those two are actually opposites. But anyway, you kind of get the idea that there is a lot of resolution and a lot of clarity to the mids, and don't mess with it. So fine tune it, and all that. And so, yeah, you don't want this. Again, that EA500 had that over-energetic upper mids, and that was a half step too energetic, and that really threw off the balance in the stage. Again, why I fine-tuned it, push the upper mids down a little bit. That gives you better stage, a little less energetic. So where EA1000 shines, acoustic and vocals, and kind of less busy tracks where you can appreciate each note. I will say this one does a little bit different than what EA500 does. This one's very much closer to Oxygen in that the music and the styles that work better, acoustic music and vocals, I think those absolutely shine. This thing is a superstar at doing that style of music. It's definitely one of the best openings to London Grammar's Hey Now that I've heard on a set in recent memory. Just that opening, I think it's the guitar and her voice and the slight resonance that you hear in the room. Man, it's done very, very well, and that's exactly where this set shines. So don't mess with it by giving it too much bass, but do change the nozzle so you can actually hear all the extension. So again, the treble is another hard part to fine tune. You need to relax the lower treble so it's not so pinna sharp. and it needs some volume so you can hear the extension, and you need a good flat source with extension, as there isn't really any boost in the upper treble. And like I said, the other nozzles tend to dip this out a little bit, and it becomes really harder to hear the airiness and the height to the sound stage. But kind of there, but again, you're gonna have to play with the nozzles to really hear it. Stage, almost 100% why I chose the do-it-yourself nozzle in that filter, which also works on EA500 in the same configuration, but it takes that bright edge off of the upper mids, and it gives the stage a deeper, higher sound. Right away, you can hear it. It's super noticeable. If you're into Madonna, her Holiday, the opening to that track, kind of like London Grammar's opening to Hey Now. If you listen to the opening of Madonna's Holiday, where the sides hit your ears, either it's in your ear or it's above your ear or above your head, it's a pretty much, a gross version of how much extension you can hear, because it hits the soundstage right away, and it only takes like a few seconds to know whether Holiday is going to come out right or not. And again, on these other tips, it brings Holiday, that opening, right down into your ear, just not enough height, and you hear it right away. So you should get a nice projection around your head and the black background with sharp contrast in the middle. So again, the mids are super clear. There's a lot of resolution. You should actually hear really nice definition of notes right in the mids, and behind that there shouldn't really be any bass to cloud up or mask over. There should be a very sharp black background. And again, this acoustic note over a black background, kind of where Oxygen shines, exactly where EA1000 shines as well. So is it better than Olina SE or better than Oxygen? I would say it's a bit of a strange mix, and I just kind of talked about it. So the acoustic genres of Oxygen really fit technically with the presentation on EA1000, but it has a little bit of a warmer sound like Olina SE. It's sort of in between the two. And that's mostly going back to the original Oxygen, which was not really as warm, and Olina SE was much warmer. So this one kind of fits in between the two. But Oxygen will have those female vocals. If you like those over-energetic female vocals, Oxygen still does that very well. I think Olina SE out of the box, I think it still does have better stage, better general appealing tuning. E1000, I think the mid resolution, this driver, what they did on the clarity and the resolution and the detail and the mids, pretty fantastic. But it still has Simgot's house sound, and you still have to either deal with that or enjoy that or do it yourself and fine tune it like I did. So that is what I got on EA1000. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and I will see you next time.